The laughter from inside the house was a sharp, foreign sound. I stood on the doorstep, my arms aching from the 9-hour drive and the weight of the old wooden box I carried. My son's fiancée, Renee, stood in the doorway, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Oh no, we had the dinner last night," she said, her voice a mix of feigned apology and mild inconvenience. "We didn't know if you could make the trip." The words landed like a physical blow. I had driven from Quezon to Batangas, cradling this box of family history, believing I was racing against the clock to make Miguel's engagement dinner. Now, I was just a woman standing in the dark, holding a box of forgotten things. I could hear the party inside, the clinking glasses, the warm, overlapping chatter. It was a sound that excluded me. I was an unexpected guest, a ghost at the feast. I brought this," I managed to say, my voice thin. "It's the family heirlooms. The maps." Renee's polite smile didn't waver. "What a shame, Mum. The celebration was yesterday." "Mum." The word felt hollow. There was no hug, no invitation to come in and rest. Just the cold, hard fact of my miscalculation. The weight of the box in my hands was no longer that of wood and paper, but of shame and a profound, aching hurt. I stood there for a moment longer, a foolish part of me hoping Miguel would appear behind her, his face breaking into a smile of surprise. But there was nothing, only the closed door and the muffled joy from within. Back in the car, I placed the box on the passenger seat. The old wood, carved by my father's hands, seemed to mock me. Inside lay 3 maps, hand-drawn by my grandfather, a cargo driver who charted the old provincial roads. He passed them to my father, who passed them to me. They were our story, a testament to the sweat and toil that built our name. Tonight, I had hoped to pass that story to my son. Tears came then, not of anger, but of a deep, weary sorrow. A mother's love had fueled this 9-hour journey, this hopeful plan, and it had been erased with a single, offhand phrase. I drove to a small motel in San Pablo, the box my only companion. In the sterile silence of the room, I lifted the lid. With reverent hands, I laid the maps on the bed. The paper was dry and fragile, the ink faded to a soft brown, but as my fingers traced the lines my grandfather had drawn, the maps came alive. I saw not just roads, but his journey, his struggles, his legacy. A quiet realization settled in my chest. This legacy was not for a son who had forgotten his history. It was for those who still understood the value of their origins. The next morning, before dawn, I began the drive back to my empty home in Bowen. The silence in the car was a cocoon. I wasn't running away anymore. I was moving forward. With every kilometer, a little of the weight I'd carried for so long seemed to lift. My house greeted me with its familiar silence. Tomas, my husband, had been gone for 2 years, and the quiet he left behind often felt like a presence itself, a ghost of the life we once shared. But today, the silence felt different. It wasn't heavy with loneliness. It felt like space, like rest. I made ginger tea and placed the box on the kitchen table. As the steam rose from my cup, my eyes fell on an envelope I'd ignored for weeks. It was from the Batangas Museum, where I had once volunteered as a historian. The director, my old friend Sylvia Lamas, was inviting me back to help curate an exhibit of old trade maps. She had specifically mentioned my family's collection. Before, the invitation had felt like a burden, a reminder of a life I had put aside. Now, I picked it up, the paper crisp under my fingers. Sylvia's words leaped out at me. The things we protect are not just possessions, they are stories. I thought of Miguel, of the cold doorstep, of the maps sitting in their box. If my own family did not want these stories, perhaps it was time to share them with the world. I called Sylvia. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and immediate. "Lena, I thought you'd never call." "I'm ready, Sylvia," I said, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. It's time for others to see our maps. The following day, I brought the box to the museum. Sylvia greeted me with a tight, heartfelt embrace. She led me to a clean, well-lit room where we laid the maps out on a large table. She handled them with white gloves, her touch filled with a respect I hadn't felt from my own blood. "They're beautiful, Lena," she whispered. "There's history here, not just in the ink, but in the hands that drew it." "My grandfather drew these by lamplight," I told her, a swell of pride momentarily displacing the grief. "Our family's journey is in every line." She looked at me, her eyes serious. "Not all heirlooms need to stay at home. It's right that others see this." In that moment, surrounded by the tangible evidence of my past, I felt a shift within me. I was not just a mother who had been left behind. I was Lena Padilla, a keeper of stories, and my story was not over. A week later, the museum hosted the exhibit opening. I wore a simple barong blouse and walked into the gallery with a heart full of nervous anticipation. The maps were displayed as the centerpiece, spotlights illuminating their delicate lines. A small plaque read, "The Roads of the Padillas, a family heritage rediscovered." I watched as strangers, students, teachers, historians stopped to admire them. They leaned in, pointing, discussing, their faces alight with interest. They were treating these pieces of my soul with more reverence than my own son had. Sylvia came to stand beside me, slipping her arm through mine. "Look, Lena," she said softly, "your stories have found their way home." Tears welled in my eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of release. The people I had loved most had forgotten me, but here, in this quiet hall full of ghosts and history, I had found a place where I still mattered. When I returned home that night, the silence of my house was no longer an echo of absence. It was a blank page. I was no longer just Miguel's mother, waiting for a call that rarely came. I was the author of my own life, and I was finally ready to write a new chapter. The wedding invitation arrived a week after the museum opening. It was sleek and formal, slipped under my door with no note, no personal message. The details were printed in a minimalist font, ceremony only, no reception. The message was as cold and clear as Renee's smile on the doorstep. I was not wanted at the celebration, only at the obligatory ritual. I placed the card in a drawer, my hand steady. The initial sting was there, a familiar ache, but it was quickly overshadowed by a colder, more solid resolve. This was no longer just about emotional neglect. It was a deliberate exclusion. And it forced me to look at other things I had been deliberately ignoring. I went to the old cabinet, my heart a steady drum in my chest, and pulled out a blue folder I hadn't opened in years. It was labeled Family. Inside were the ghosts of my generosity. Receipts for loans I'd given Miguel to start his business, 130,000 pesos. With no contract, just a mother's trust. A statement showing a payment of 170,000 I'd made to save a piece of land for them. No formal agreement. His grateful thank you, Mum, had been currency enough. I had never tallied these things, never thought of them as debts. But now, seeing the numbers on paper, a chilling clarity settled over me. My love had been measured in pesos, and it had been taken for granted. Then I found it, tucked beneath the older documents. The new title for the vacation house in San Juan. The house Tomas and I had bought together. Before he died, we had signed a deed of donation, intending to leave it to Miguel for his future family. But this document was different. The ownership had been transferred. My name was nowhere to be found. There was no signature from me, no request for my consent. The paper felt cold in my hands. This wasn't an oversight. This was theft. A silent, calculated act done behind my back while I was lost in grief. The quiet of the house, once a companion, now felt complicit. It had witnessed this betrayal and said nothing. The next morning, I dressed with a purposeful calm. I placed all the documents, the loan receipts, the old title, the fraudulent new one into a thick envelope. My hands did not shake. There was a strange power in this clarity, an energy I hadn't felt in years. I went to see attorney Angela de los Reyes, a friend from my youth whose sharp mind I had always admired. Her office was orderly and quiet. "Lena," she said, surprised but welcoming. "It's been too long. What can I do for you?" I placed the envelope on her desk. "I need your help, Angela. I need to bring something to light." I watched as she sifted through the papers, her expression growing graver with each page. When she saw the new title, her head snapped up. "Lena, your signature isn't here. Did you authorize this?" "No," I said, my voice even I did not. She let out a long breath. "This is more than a family disagreement. This is fraud. But you need to be sure. Once we start this process, there's no easy way out. Are you ready?" I met her gaze directly, no longer the hesitant, grieving widow. "If I don't fight for myself, Angela, who will?" She studied me for a moment, then asked the pivotal question. "I need to know, are you doing this for revenge or to defend your rights. I looked out her window at the sun-washed streets. I'm not seeking revenge, but I will not be silent while they steal what Thomas and I built together. A small, grim smile touched her lips. Good, then we're ready. Empowered, I returned home and began a more thorough search. In a dusty box of Tomas's old things, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it, written in his familiar, steady hand. For Lena, in case you ever need it. My breath caught. Inside was a copy of the original, unaltered deed of donation, clearly naming me as the primary heir and beneficiary of all our joint assets, including the San Juan house. It was dated 2 months before his death. He had known that I might need protecting, even from our own son. I clutched the paper to my chest, feeling his presence like a shield. I was not alone in this fight. The following day, my neighbor Aling Sion stopped by for the coffee I had promised her. As we sat on the terrace, she saw the tension I could no longer hide. "You have so much on your mind, Lena," she said gently. "Is it Miguel?" The truth tumbled out. They stole the vacation house Sion. They transferred the title without my knowledge. She sighed, a world of understanding in that sound. She placed her wrinkled hand over mine. Children sometimes put their own comfort before the people who raise them. But remember, their choices are not your failure. Her kindness undid me, and for a moment I let the tears fall, not tears of weakness, but of release. The weight of this secret was now shared. The phone rang later that evening. It was Miguel. His voice was tense, stripped of any warmth. "Mum, we heard you went to a lawyer." The accusation was sharp. "Let's not make this a big thing." I felt a chill at his tone. "I am not making it a big thing, Miguel. I am defending what is true." His reply was swift and cold. "Think about what you're doing. You're going to destroy this family." The line went dead. His words hung in the air, but they had lost their power to shatter me. "You destroyed it first," I thought, the realization bringing a strange peace. The family I thought we were had already been broken. I was just picking up the pieces that were rightfully mine. My resolve was tested again when Renee sent a terse text message. "Mum, let's talk privately. Don't let this get out of hand." I did not reply. I was done with private conversations where I was manipulated into silence. Their fear of scandal was not my concern. My concern was justice. The day of our appointment at the Registry of Deeds arrived. Dressed simply, I met Angela at her office. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "I'm ready." As we walked into the government office, I felt a profound calm. The bureaucratic noise, the lines of people with their own troubles, it all faded into a background hum. My purpose was a clear, sharp point. When the clerk reviewed the documents, she immediately identified the irregularities. "We'll have to summon the other party to clarify this," she stated. It was official. I would have to face Miguel and Renee across a legal divide. A flicker of anxiety rose, but Angela placed a steadying hand on my arm. "You are not alone, Lena," she whispered. Leaving the building, I felt lighter. I was no longer a victim waiting in the shadows. I was a claimant stepping into the light. That evening, a small, unmarked package awaited me at home. Inside was an old photograph of Tomas, a young Miguel, and me. From a time when his smile was effortless and his love was unconditional. On the back, in his childhood scrawl, was written, "For Mom, don't ever forget I love you." I traced the faded ink, my heart a battlefield of love and pain. I didn't know if this was a genuine plea or a calculated move to soften me. But one thing was certain. It was a reminder that the son I loved was still in there, buried beneath the man who had betrayed me. The fight ahead would not be fueled by hatred, but by the hope that by standing my ground, I might someday help him find his way back. When I got home from the cafe, I didn't know how to describe what I was feeling. I wasn't happy, nor was I angry. It was as if a heavy weight had been dislodged from my chest. Not because I had forgiven Miguel, but because I had finally seen the truth clearly. What they did wasn't an accident. It was a decision. When I entered the house, I sat by the table and heated some soup. The surroundings were quiet, but inside me, something was aching. "Miguel, why did you do it?" He couldn't hear me, but I needed to say it. Sometimes, if you don't release the pain, it clings to your bones even more. The next day, while I was organizing papers in the living room, the attorney called. "Lena, we need to proceed with the process. Miguel's admission during your conversation last night is a significant point for the case." I looked outside the window. It was sunny, but the air was cold. 8. Even if he admits it, does it still need to proceed? I asked. "Lena, the question is not whether you can forgive him. The question is, can you give them back the power to trample on you?" I quietly closed my eyes. No, I couldn't go back to how it was before. After hanging up, I walked to Tomas's old chest. I opened it and saw our old pictures, me, him and a little Miguel, still bald from a fresh haircut. We were happy then, complete, untainted by pain. As I looked at the picture, there was a knock on the door, heavy, rapid. When I opened it, I almost lost my breath. Miguel and Renee were standing there. Their faces were serious. "Mum," Miguel said, "can we talk now?" I didn't let them in immediately. I waited for him to explain why they were here. "Mum, I don't want this to go to court. I made a mistake with my words yesterday, but I hope we can talk about it again." Renee had her head bowed, but her irritation was barely contained. "Mom, for everyone's peace," she added. Now I smiled, not with joy, but with understanding. "Peace?" I asked. "Or fear of shame?" No one answered. I slowly opened the door, but not to let them in. "We can talk, but I will not turn my back on the truth. Not anymore." They stood on the terrace, and there, for the first time, I saw not just fear in Miguel's eyes, but the worry that he might not be able to get back into my life. And in my mind, I had a clear answer. If they wanted to return, it wasn't words they needed to fix, but actions. I was already standing. It felt like a symbol of the distance they had slowly built between us. Everyone was quiet, with only the sound of the wind and the noise of the birds audible. Miguel was fidgeting with his fingers, unable to look straight. Renee, on the other hand, had a furrowed brow, clearly unaccustomed to this kind of conversation. "What exactly do you want to say?" I finally asked. Not angrily, not harshly, just a straightforward question from a woman tired of understanding it. "I don't want this to lead to a lawsuit," Miguel said, scratching his head. "If we did anything wrong, we didn't intend to hurt you." I laughed softly, not with happiness, not with bitterness. "Son, are you saying transferring the title was an accident? Taking the land, not inviting me properly to your engagement dinner?" He didn't answer immediately. I saw him bite his lip, as if restraining himself. "Mom, you don't understand," he suddenly said. "We have plans. We want to build a resort, and we need capital. We thought you didn't need the property anymore." My eyebrows rose. "And who told you that?" "Did I?" They were both silent. I continued, "If you really needed it, why didn't you come to me? Why did you do it behind my back? Why did you remove me as if I meant nothing?" Miguel took a deep breath. He clearly wanted to answer but couldn't find the right words. "Mum, I was scared," he said softly. "I thought if I told you, you'd get angry." I shook my head. "You were more scared of making me angry than of stealing from me." "For the first time," Miguel cried, not loudly, not sobbing, but the tears he had long been holding back. "Mum, I didn't think the impact would be this big. I made a mistake, but I don't want to lose you." I looked at him for a long time, longer than I should have. "Son, you will never be lost from my heart, but that doesn't mean I will accept what you did." Renee stood up, clearly restless. "So, what do you want to happen, Mum?" I answered directly. "I want the truth. I want respect. I want what you took returned. And most of all, I want to teach you a lesson you have long disregarded. Debt of gratitude is not used to control a person, but to value them." They were both silent, and in that moment, I knew the fight wasn't over, but I was the one holding the direction. The terrace fell silent, as if there was no wind, no birds, no noise from the street. Just the three of us, three people connected by blood, but separated by the truth. They just looked at me, as if waiting for a sentence. But I was not a judge. I was the mother who had been left hurt, but who now stood firm for herself. I adjusted my sitting position. "Miguel, Renee, I'm not asking for perfection. I'm only asking for what is right." Miguel bit his lip. "Mum, we will return the title. Everything. No conditions. If that's what's right, we will do it." I didn't expect the quickness of his answer. I didn't know if the heaviness in my chest would lessen or if I would feel more troubled. "Is that true?" "Not because you're afraid of the lawsuit, but because you know what you did was wrong." He was quiet for a moment before nodding. "Yes, Mum, you're right." It's not because I'm afraid of shame, but because I don't want to lose you. I closed my eyes. Not because I wanted to cry, but because I felt an old pain slowly loosening from the edges of my heart. Not to hurt me, but to remind me how long I had waited for a simple truth. Renee was the next to speak. The tension on her face hadn't disappeared, but there was a hint of shame now. Please forgive me too. I shouldn't have let you feel like you had no place in our lives. I stood up, slowly but firmly. I cannot forgive you now, not yet. They both looked at me, but I am willing to listen. I am willing to reconcile if you show me, not just tell me it. Miguel approached, but I didn't let him hug me. Son, you were the one who walked away. You were the one who caused the crack, and you are also the one who holds the key to fix it. I will not force myself. He nodded, finally sobbing. I will do it, Mom, not because I'm afraid, but because I want to come back to you. I want to regain your trust. For the first time, I felt those words were true, but I knew words were not enough. We will see each other again, I said. When the documents are fixed, when your role is clear again, and when both of you are ready to look at me without lies. They walked outside the gate. We didn't know where the next chapter would lead, but one thing was clear. I would not let my self-worth be trampled on. I was no longer the mother who was always understanding, but the woman who knew how to choose for herself. And as the afternoon approached, with the sun blurring behind the trees, I whispered to Thomas, I have finished, and I will begin again.